morning. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on this 11th day of July 2023. I want to introduce the panelists here in studio. I have Jen Kagiri, who is the woman representative for Laikipia County. Good morning. Good morning, Sam. It's been such a long time. I haven't hosted you.
You've not invited me, but I'm glad today you did. And
Great.
Even more glad in the midst of veterans who are seniors.
Interesting. I'm told when you'll come potea, but welcome back.
Thank you.
We have Senator Richard Onyonka of Kisii County. Good morning.
Morning, Sammy. How are you?
Good to see you. Asubuhi ya leo.
Nice to see you.
We have David Ocheng, Member of Parliament for Ugenya. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Welcome back to the show. It's been a few weeks, I think.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. Busy with budget, Finance Act, what?
Yeah, I think your last act was the Finance Act and you disappeared. But it's good to see you back.
I did.
Where I said they were given cash to pass the law.
Oh, they were?
Who said Osoro?
Yeah.
No, actually, Osoro said that your people, as your MPs, were given some soup.
But even their side, some of them were given.
Oh, they also given soup? Is that so honorable?
David.
It's a big lie.
David, please don't say no. I'm in the same house with you. Those who are looking like they might tilt were brought to the center. Not like you. You cannot be
because
given.
you know, Sam, I've been in Bunge now 12 years.
Yeah.
And I can say with the Bible, I've never been offered a single bribe by anybody in Parliament. I will never take.
But does it happen?
Yeah, it happens.
Yes, it does.
Usually, how much is it?
I wouldn't know because
sometimes even 10K.
I don't partake.
10K.
I've never been in such a situation where I love.
Sammy, that house is amazing.
10K to pass a law.
Ah, boss.
Have you experienced it, Jen? It's how many? 10 months now?
I'm yet to experience it.
Okay, all right, interesting. I would want to know what qualifies, or what makes one qualify for how much. That would be an interesting story to talk about. Anyway, so this morning, a few things have happened. The High Court yesterday extended the suspension orders, so the conservatory orders on the Finance Act, and referred that matter to the Chief Justice to empanel a 3-judge bench to hear and determine the challenge or the petition against the Finance Act of 2023. Of course, the implication is that the plan of the government to raise up to 311 billion shillings for this financial year is sort of delayed, of course, waiting for a decision of the courts. But of course, we also know that there are some other issues. For instance, the housing levy. It may not be implemented if that decision will not have been out by the end of July, but also in good time for employers to implement it in the payrolls. The VAT, which has been implemented, the 16% VAT on fuel, still there are no orders allowing it to happen. There is a contempt suit in court, not yet determined, but the prices of fuel on the 11th day since that increment. IPRA is supposed to be reviewing those prices by 14th of June, that is in the next 3 days, because that is the custom. We don't know what will happen, knowing that the court has suspended implementation of that VAT on fuel. And that's why I want us to begin by speaking to Honorable David Ocheng. I will start with you just because you are the first to arrive, not for any other reason. And so this is happening, and I remember we had robust conversations on TV, off TV, and I mean many fora, including at Parliament, and these controversial issues were debated, discussed. Then the Finance and Planning Committee brought a report that, again, the contributors felt this was not reflective of the concerns that people are raising, and that's partly the reason why the matter is in court. So how much does it affect the government, especially collecting that revenue, but also what are the options, knowing that these are matters that were very well articulated in different public fora?
No, thank you so much, Sam. In the scheme of things, you know, Sam, we have 3 arms of government. We got the legislature, we got the judiciary, we got the executive. And the legislature, the executive first, has its plans that are formed into policy and sometimes into law, or into legislation proposals, which are brought to Parliament. Parliament does its job of passing law, and the judiciary has a duty of arbitrating interests that may exist at any one point in time. And so it happens that the Finance Act has issues that a section of Kenyans think are not, legal in courts or constitutional in courts. And so they have gone to court, and the courts have to play their role in doing what they need to do. And so personally, I will not begrudge the courts on what they have done, because I'm hoping that the matter being such an urgent matter, will be given, adequate time,
right,
in a timely manner, so the government is able to know the fate of the Finance Act. I'll tell you a story about Biden, the president of the US. He had a very heavy plan when he came to power, a very heavy one. And he wanted to build America, and he called it Build Back Better, BBB. That Build Back Better to date has never seen the light of day. It's hard to chunk it into pieces, parts and parts and parts to enable him buy it as he goes on with governance. And that's how the world works. And so I believe that even as the Finance Act remains being litigated in courts, the government must have to find ways and means of making sure that the resources are available for development of the country.
Right.
And so I agree that there will be a level of backhanding of the government if the courts insist on the fact that the Finance Act or some parts of it may be illegal. And it's good that these decisions are made early so that the government knows how to deal with any shortfall that may happen in the revenue collection. Yes, so I think I don't want, personally, I don't want to go into this thing of, fighting the courts that are delaying government, because that's their job.
Right.
Their job is to arbitrate. So the government will have, in my opinion, recalibrate and think about way forward. What about if the courts throw out this thing altogether out? Like you said, the Finance Act, in my opinion, has been litigated in the public opinion, like the BBI or like the new constitution. I don't think there's anything new that we would say about if it's the housing levy, if it is the fuel levy, if it is all these things have been spoken about. But at some level, we also need to understand that there's the realm of policy and the realm of law. There is a manifesto that the government comes in with. Nigeria today is Africa's largest producer of petroleum and oil today. They tried running a fuel subsidy for a while, but it came to naught. They said it's getting us into a debt hole. Every year we keep giving a subsidy, we're not getting anywhere. And so the new president comes in and says, I will die with this. So he says no further subsidies. We need to get back to this. And so at some point in time, I think we'll just have to, one, live within our means, and above all, allow governments, when they come to power, to implement their manifestos.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you said that. Let me skip you a little bit. Honorable Kagere, so the government was hoping, according to the Finance and Planning Committee chair, that is Kuria Kimani, he said that the government was planning to collect 311 billion shillings more from the Finance Act of 2023. And now, if this is delayed, because indeed it is already, how does it affect the budget estimate side, the expenditure side? Because the conversation was that there's a budget deficit of 718 billion shillings. If you don't collect the 311, then that raises the deficit to something more. How does the government adjust?
Thank you, Sam. Allow me to start by first stating and picking up from where my colleague David, where he left off. First, let's inform Kenyans that this is the 60th finance bill since Kenya attained independence. When we look at the attention the 2023 finance bill has gotten, it would make one thing that it's the first time that this is happening. But it is good for us to tell Kenyans that this is the 60th time it's happening. And that said, this finance bill has gotten the attention that it has gotten, thanks to the media houses like you, and of course to the development of the information age. But it is also important to inform Kenyans that this finance bill is an answer to the budget that the government presents to Parliament. So this year, the government presented a budget of 3.6 trillion. An assumption of 1.5 trillion will go to recurrent expenditure, almost 900 billion will go to servicing our public debt, and 700 and something will go to development. That said, Kenyans were very happy when they were told in that budget the allocation of roads will be 250 billion, when they were told JSS has been increased from 15 billion to around 25 billion, when they were told help has been doubled from 15 billion to 30 billion. All that was joyful to Kenyans. However, the finance bill comes to answer the question, where will that money come from? So it's important for us to note, like today I've looked at the headline on the Daily Nation where it says blocked. So first it sounds blocked, like it's the first time somebody has gone to court on a finance bill. Let it be reminded that even in 2018, Senator Okiya Omtata went to court still on the same 2018 finance bill. Other than that, it is also assumed like it's the first time Senator Okiya Omtata is going to court on any petition. He has been to court on very many petitions. Remember the expressway, he went to court about it. The registration of Huduma numbers, he went to court about it. Then also the closing of TV stations during the digital transfer, he went to court about it. So sometimes I find myself wondering why we are making this finance bill look different from any other. And for me, I feel, and this to answer your question, the loss is to all of us. Because this is a finance bill that was from Mwananchi. This is a finance bill that was going to a budget that was actually going to look at how young people could get employed. And that is in regards to the housing levy, where we'd have had affordable housing construction. And here our young people would have gotten employment. So for me to say, to answer your question, I would want to say it is a loss for all of us as a country. And the faster we remedy this situation, the better for all of us. But as it's been said, it's a right for every Kenyan. There are those who feel there's a part of the Finance Act that they don't agree with, and they are allowed to go to court. And the sooner we resolve it, the better for all of us.
Okay, interesting. But also it's important to add here that it is just a High Court decision, conservatory orders, so it remains suspended up until that matter has been heard and determined. But of course, Senator Onyonka, obviously that opens the space for even subsequent appeals. Should the High Court decide in whatever way it does, it is possible to appeal against that decision and affect a lot of government operations as you know it. What are your thoughts this morning about this particular decision and the future, especially the financial year?
Well, I hope that the KK Alliance will be a team that observes the law. What Omtata and many of us are saying is that, yes, the KK Alliance may have the policy, it may have the manifesto, and it may have campaigned on some of these things, which many of them they are actually not honoring, but do it within the law. If you don't do it within the law, it doesn't matter. But reasonably, I think for me, if you look at maybe the 5 petitions, like my leader has said that Omtata has actually brought to court, about 4, I think 3 of them finally got a reprieve, which means he was right. One of the other issues that my colleagues may not have internalized is that in the Senate, we are actually enjoined in this matter because one of the questions we want, if possible, including a Supreme Court interpretation, is what is the role of the Senate? Is it just to be a talk shop where we just pass revenue allocation bills because they're money bills and after that impeach the president? Or should we not be, because we are dealing with money bills and because we are dealing about the distribution and sharing or shareage of the revenue that the government is collecting, be part and parcel of the setting up of, first of all, the strategy, number 2, what the government brings as a budget? Shouldn't we not engage ourselves a little bit more in terms of making sure that we are actually playing a relevant and important role so that the executive therefore does not railroad everything that we talk about? You remember, Sam, we had said we wanted county revenue to be shared at the figure of about 385 billion. But the executive said no. I mean, 411 billion. Then the executive said no, we are going to give you 385 billion, whatever you do. So these are issues which are coming up right now. But again, there is nothing wrong with what has been done. In other words, let us go through due process. I hope that the judiciary or the judges who are doing this will expedite it very quickly because it's a matter of national interest. I believe, because of my small experience in this matter, that if the implementation of what the president has presented is delayed, we will basically overlap with what we were having before that. You've also raised the issue of where is the 300 billion going to come from. Sam, look at your page 1. No, sorry, it's here. It's I think it's in the Standard. The government is waiting for 575 billion to be given by the IMF and World Bank. I mean, from September last year, we've borrowed 1.2 trillion. I mean, so let's continue borrowing.
Really? Yet the agenda has been to reduce, especially the external borrowing.
We'll continue borrowing. There is, I mean, Sami, the truth is, it's been 10 months. We've just picked 1 trillion shillings.
Yeah.
And if you take this money and start looking at it, are you with me? We are at which month now? We are in the month of July.
Yes.
When did the financial year start?
1st of July.
1st of July. How much money have we collected for the last 9 months? It's mind-blowing. And yet we are sitting and looking at it like it's normal. It's not normal.
You know, I hear you. First of all, the figure that you're citing there of 1 trillion shillings borrowing is not accurate. It's about 700 billion or so. And,
you know, I've sat here with you once and I told you I can present the figures. Please don't. I can come next time.
Please find those figures.
Can we agree with you that next time when I come here, I come with a list?
Senator Onyonka has promised that.
Yes.
So we'll hold
I will table it here.
To that, so that you tell us.
I never say what I can't verify.
Okay.
This show.
And we'll wait for you to bring us that.
I'll bring it.
Honorable Farah Maalim joins us now. He is the Member of Parliament for the Dadaab constituency and a former Deputy Speaker. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm great, and it's good to see you. We're talking about what just happened at the High Court. The Finance Bill, or the Finance Act 2023 has been delayed. From your experience, because you've been in Parliament at different instances, different times, and this is happening. So what do you see as the biggest impact, especially on the expenditure plan of the government? And is there a better way to deal with such matters in future? Because it was very contested. It's a bill that was very contested, but still ended up with contests, even after becoming law.
Let me tell you one thing. When you talk about the independence of the three arms of the government, is the exercise of the mandates of the three arms of the government cannot be interfered by any arm against the other. It can only come in a personal litigation or a matter that's direct, and an individual has got a locus standi. For the courts to come out there and say we're suspending the act that was done by Parliament,
right,
to say the least, is the height of ignorance of the law itself and the failure to understand how democracy works. Have you ever seen anywhere in the world where a government's budget was stopped by courts? Look at all the democracies. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Look at the Westminster system of the British, the Commonwealth countries, New Zealand, Australia, and then look also the other one, because ours is a little bit of a mongrel right now. We tried also to assume the American system. Have you ever seen the American courts with all their litigations try to get involved in what Congress does? I do understand there has been a lot of activism in the creation of our current, what you call, Constitution 2010. But whatever it is, I was in Parliament when Parliament had no powers other than to take away a pound from a budget. The primary bill of Parliament is to pass finance bills. Primary. That's why it's called the House of Commons, you know? It started off with the House of Commons. The commoners, you see, there's no taxation without representation. Taxation is an area in which the government can even decide. You know, there are only two ministries, to the best of my knowledge, but 2 ministries for sure I know. They can even make a law anytime. Minister of Health and the Minister of Finance. The Finance Ministry, the minister himself has powers to levy taxes on something, not through the budget, but even by giving, you know, by his own, what do you call, decree.
Without involving Parliament?
Without involving Parliament.
How so?
But Parliament should have passed a law that allows him to do that.
Hang on a minute. The fact that Parliament has not passed that law itself, it means you maintain the status quo ante. The Minister of Health also has those powers. Minister of Health, for example, the minister can right now come and quarantine and close off any part of this country because of outbreaks of anything. As for taxation, the government can do these things any time between now and the next, what you call, a budget. The operationalization of that one through this constitutional number 200, or rather of 2010, is a lacuna that's on our part. But the fact that there's a lacuna on that does not mean that you cease to do what you used to do. They maintain the status quo ante.
But you just said that you have a problem with...
Can I just finish? Look, the lawmaking power of the parliament is unfettered. And the problem I have is that we have had people who are activists all their lives. We want to see people who have practiced law, who are magistrates, who are judges, who became judges of the Court of Appeal, who became judges of the Supreme Court and the rest of it. How was our Supreme Court constituted in the first place, you remember? If you look at most of them were people who are activists. There's no jurisprudential, what they call disposition that is so enormous and so fine that you can say so and so. They are a little bit here and there. And with an exception of one or two of them, many of them just have the first degree still. You get my point? I want us to have the philosophy of the law itself. The founders of anything, you can have even a constitution that's created by people who are thinkers in any field, in music, in literature, you get my say, in political science, in history, whatever it is. Because a constitution is basically a value document. A value document. But then to say that, you see, it's like now saying Parliament has stopped through a resolution of the House, the High Court from deliberating on something. The reason why we have a sub judice in House is that if the matter is alive in court, you cannot discuss it in Parliament. If the matter is done in Parliament, the courts cannot begin interrogating that until such time that somebody is aggrieved, an individual is aggrieved, not by presumption that this has been created by Parliament, and that individual is saying, look, I cannot pay these taxes because I have this and this and this problem. And even then, they will rule on the law. And if the law is not there, then of course there's a lacuna.
Okay, but just hold on. Honorable Malim, you said that you have a problem with an arm of government interfering with another arm of government, but I thought judiciary exists so that if there are any disputes, they can arbitrate over them. So why would you have a problem with that?
When you say the independent three arms of the government, none of them can direct the other. None of them can play an oversight role.
But the courts have not directed...
none of them can play an oversight role over the other. You know this.
No, it does.
It does.
Hang on a minute.
Allow him to finish.
Allow me to finish, Ocheng, and let's try and... You see, what I'm trying to tell you is that show me one jurisdiction that has done exactly what has happened in this case. You see, look at the Republicans, for example, in the U.S. You know how much they have been disappointed with the Democrats in the House of Representatives because the past is held by the House of Representatives. The negotiations is done there. The agreement is done there. Once something is passed there, once taxations and other things are passed there, then of course, you don't go anywhere else. Nobody can go to court, however much you're aggrieved.
You can.
But the Constitution of Kenya... Just hold on. Honorable Malim, the Constitution of Kenya allows that. No,
I know there is a small window that people try to exploit in these things by looking at all that totality of the number of articles that are there.
Yeah.
But the sanctified rule, the one that is a religion, is the non-interference in the arms of...
Okay,
Sam, let me say something on that, please.
Let me start with Senator, then yourself.
Sam, thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to inform my leader, my colleague, Honorable Farah Maalim, that in the U.S., immediately Joe Biden was changing the budget. The Republicans said no.
Because they have the numbers in the...
Just hold on.
Okay, sorry.
It's not because they have the numbers.
Go ahead.
The Democrats decided they were actually going to change the ceilings. The Republicans said no. There were two options that came out. One of it is that the Republicans were deciding to go to court because they have a majority in the Supreme Court, and their decision was, we are going to run with this thing to the Supreme Court because we have the majority in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would rule back and tell the Democrats they cannot go tax and spend. That is the Supreme Court, and there have been rulings over that, Honorable Farah Maalim. If you go to I can't get the exact cases and the court numbers, the case numbers. Number two, Farah Maalim, Actually, nobody is asking the president that what he has done is wrong. That stage we've passed. Is there anything wrong with our side asking, is this constitutional? You agree with it because you're saying the president can decide to tax people as much as he can decide to change, which is according to his manifesto, and it's true. This is one arm of government. But the truth and the reality is that Kenya, that's why everybody says our constitution is actually very progressive. It allows the checks and balances that are required so that you don't have a president who's going to go awoke and keep on increasing taxes on his people irrespective. In fact, it preempts the public taking the leadership back to themselves and even going to the streets and trying to overthrow the government because they are not able to satisfy whatever the government would be wanting. So our argument, Honorable Farah, is not that we are trying to ask for the interference of what the legislation should do. You remember, and Kenyans, we are very brilliant in this. What made the BBI collapse? It's because the same court was telling us that your responsibilities, that if you have this law being passed, let it come through, there is a process that we needed to have followed. You can't argue that because we have got members of the county assemblies, you have members of parliament, and all these guys have agreed we are going to have BBI and even signed on to it. No, you must follow the normal legal procedure.
Okay.
All right? And this is why we are saying, Honorable Farah, that is why we are saying, for me, let us allow due process.
Okay.
Let us allow the courts play their role. Let the National Assembly and the presidency play their role. Let the executive play its role, and let us make sure that the National Assembly plays its role.
I take note that
can I just correct one issue?
No, wait.
Let's hear from Ocheng, then you can respond to both. Please. Yes.
You know, the Honorable Farah is trying to expose a principle in law called the principle of judicial restraint. But the way he talks about it, in my opinion, is not the way it's meant in a constitutional framework. We are neither US nor the UK. We are the Republic of Kenya with a very progressive constitution. And so to say that the courts cannot question the process when we are going on with the law. Like, remember, we had so many things going on during the finance bill debate.
Right.
At that stage, they couldn't do anything. But the moment the bill becomes an act, it becomes ripe for litigation. So the courts can rule on it.
Thank you.
And so the thing that he says, which I said earlier, is that the courts should exercise judicial restraint on matters where the matters that border on policy, matters that border on, you know,
the role of the executive and parliament.
Yeah, matters that border on a manifesto, it will be judicial restraint. But nothing stops them from you know, but there's something that he says that is very important to note. Then I'll say what I think is not important to note. The most important thing to note is that in the US, for example, the courts would very rarely interfere in matters of policy. Number two, for 234 years, the Senate in the US has never sued the Congress, the House of Reps. Neither has the House of Reps sued the Senate in 234 years. The matters being litigated in court on this Finance Act today are largely matters that border on the mandates of the Senate and the National Assembly. It's never happened.
Right.
And whenever anybody out there tried going to the Supreme Court on matters that touch on the Senate's role, they'll be sent back. The Supreme Court will say, no, this is in the political realm, deal with it. And the two speakers would definitely work around it and deal with it and finish. And for me, I think the biggest issue we've had in the country for the last 11 years is the failure, in my opinion, of the two houses to deal with these issues and making the courts come into the political arena because the courts are being asked to come into the political arena. And the Supreme Court of Honorable Justice Maraga at some point in time told the two houses, you're not children, deal with your matters. And so I believe that going forward, we should have the two houses dealing with this matter so that we don't let the courts come in.
Is the US advantage because they have a clarity of hierarchy of the two houses?
Actually,
that you don't have here?
No, not quite really.
Clarity or functions of the two houses is there.
In our constitution, by the way, in our constitution, it's just refusal by the Senate, where it now sits. But I know you would want to come back to National Assembly next.
No, I can't. I'll respond to that. I'll come back.
The issue has been.
Can I just respond?
The issue has been. The issue has been the failure of, in our opinion, the Senate to accept its role.
Yeah.
And most of the time trying to peer into.
Okay.
But also some, in my opinion, some systemic issues. That a matter like Finance Act, for example, if I was one to do the Constitution, if I was in the team that wrote the Constitution, I would have given the Senate some place in it.
Okay.
But not one that is crept through the courts. No, it has to be clear in law. But more fundamentally, Sam, the Finance Act, like the Honorable Kagiri said, is only valid for 12 months. So when the courts play into it for 5-6 months, then they have definitely killed it. And that's why the principle of judicial restraint becomes important. There are some point in time you say, let what Parliament has passed be.
Okay.
But we cannot let something that Honorable Farah said pass.
Which is?
Which is that the courts are here to ensure that the executive does the right thing, Parliament does the right thing, and vice versa. If the judiciary goes beyond what's mandate, Parliament can act against it. And so something that I would never want us to lose, because we've come at a situation where there's a time when the executive was everything in the country, and that's where the law is. There's a time when Parliament could not do anything. So I think let's save what we've achieved without necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if Honorable Kagiri has something to say so that Farah can respond to all the three.
Yes, allow me to interject and say, I've also checked and realized that in the year 2019, the French government had to suspend their fuel tax because somebody went to court. So, Honorable Farah, it's good to know that other countries have done it. Mm-hmm. However, let it not be a precedent that we are borrowing from what other countries have done. Because just as Honorable Ching has said, we are losing many months. Already we are 9 months after the elections. Nothing much seems to be happening. We need to get over this. The court has to rule for us to make decisions on how to proceed. Okay,
interesting. Honorable Farah Malim, your response.
To begin with, Onyonka, the reason why there's negotiations between Biden and the Republicans is because the Republicans now have the majority in the House of Representatives.
That's true.
If they did not have the majority, they would not even come back to them. They will pass the budget. Mm-hmm. You can pass the budget with one vote, and nobody can take it to court.
True.
The Senate in the U.S. is the House of Union. That's why Montana, which used to have one member of the House of Representatives, used to have two senators. Mm-hmm. And we have already borrowed that model. Lamu has one senator, Kakamega has one senator, despite the fact that Kakamega is probably 20 times more populated than Lamu. It's the House of Union, and the mandate is very simple. The National Assembly does its job, it holds the pass, but then they determined the criteria to use in distributing what is for the counties within the Senate itself.
Right.
But the Senate to assume in most cases that they can have a role in everything that the National Assembly does, including things that do not touch on the county governments, I think, in my opinion, is a little bit of a step in. That was not the intention of the framers. And both me and him were in that parliament when we were trying to put this constitution together. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that what I want to tell you, you rather have an authoritarian, system than have anarchy. You get my point? Mm-hmm. When you have anarchy and chaos and you don't know who goes where,
what do you have?
But it's like somebody running to the court and saying, I'm stopping this government department, I'm stopping the whole government.
But that's not anarchy.
Just a second. And then, of course, there's no expenditure. You understand my point? You can even have a shutdown. You can even get to a situation whereby our military and our vital security machineries that are there. That's why the government is allowed sometimes to draw from the consolidated, fund without necessarily going to Parliament and basically regularizing that later.
Right.
The executive has a role to do, Parliament has a role to do, and judiciary has a role to do. Mm-hmm. But if now, by some of these things, you can then, either the courts try to legislate from the bench, and determine this is a good law, this is a bad law, this is everything else. Without any precedents. In many cases, they do not, we don't even have a precedent for some of these things. They will want to try and borrow from other jurisdictions, or they will want to try and use their own fertile imaginations to come with a ruling. Instead of saying, we cannot determine this in this here or this way, because the law is not very clear on that.
Okay.
So Parliament can proceed and make a law. You see what I mean? Let me just tell you one thing. I know Ocheng says...
Honorable, I want us to take a short break. Allow me to do that.
Yeah, because your bills have to be paid. I agree with you. No
yes.
but it's your bills, not our bills. We don't charge you.
Okay, we take the break. We'll come back with more after the break.